Joni, I'm so glad you're here. It's such a joy to have you. And I'm just really looking forward to what you have to share with myself and the people out there that might be looking to improve their lives somehow. And maybe you could start by just telling us a little bit about yourself.
Well, yes. And thank you for having me. You were on my podcast and I really enjoyed our conversation. Definitely like minds in terms of the purpose is to uplift all of life. That's my
Mm.
overarching mission. And so I do have different tools and modalities and workshops and all these things. But the truth is, I really want to share this conversation in a way that we give them tools right now in this message, in this moment.
Wonderful.
So who am I? I am a person who came through what I call the dark night of the soul. Now, I think that most people who go into our line of work have had something in their lives that caused them to make a left or right turn, caused them to stop and look at their lives and say, can I do this for the next 30 years? Can I live this way for the next 30 years? And the answer was, well, yeah, yes, I suppose I could. And do you choose to? No, I choose not to. Now, I didn't have any idea what that would look like. I had no idea where that was going to go. I hit menopause while my older daughter hit her adolescence, and the two of us were wild women. It was not a good combination. We went through, and this is the most recent leaping off point for me, the most recent springboard into what all the work that I do now, which is back in 2008. There was the Great Recession. We lost our home, and I was doing it in a way that my children never knew. I finally shared that in her 20s, so that because we were talking about money and how to manage it and what does it mean, and money is an exchange of life force energy, and you need to save it, and there are taxes, and there are all these muggle things that have to be dealt with. But in that moment, in that time period, I also lost 5 people to death. They transitioned. So, and then wait, there's more.
Oh my gosh. I'm just thinking losing the home, single
Yeah,
mom. Were you a single mom at the
I
time
was
you said?
not yet a single mom.
Oh, okay. But you still,
Yes, I
and
did
then
have a
you had
partner. I did have my
some,
husband.
so you had some loss as well, though.
Yes, and then my mother died, and then wait, there's more. It's like that commercial, and there's more for $9.99 at Ronco. So I fell off my horse and broke my arm. The humerus, which is the top bone of your arm, if out there, if you don't know what that is, it's not very funny, but it's called a
Oh.
humerus. And I had to lay in bed for 2 months to allow it to heal. And there was a lot of introspection. There was a lot of thinking going on, because the way they put it, you have to stay still so the bones can find each other. And
I love that, though. I love
yeah,
that description.
yes.
Yes.
In a way, that's what meditation is. Staying
Mm.
still so that the particles and pieces can find you. The 5% of our consciousness that is not spoken for. In other words, 95% of our subconscious is actually essentially every thought we've ever had, every belief we've ever thought, everything that's ever been fed to us by society or our families or commercials or whatever it is. 95% of what we think and do comes out of that already pre-programmed, the bottom of the iceberg, so to speak. And so
Interesting.
I know. So I'm a huge proponent of meditation. And like I said to you before we started this, I want to share tools, actionable tools that your people can really make a difference in their lives, to empower them. They don't have to they don't have to do anything other than interrupt the conversation that's going on in their own heads. And how they choose to interrupt that conversation is up to them. They could coach with you, they could coach with me, they could do our workshops, there are so many things that we'll share with them, yes, but that's not why we're here. We're here to make a difference somehow into the ethers by having this conversation. So going back to the dark night of the soul, so everything crashed and burned. And I remember my husband turning to me, this is 2012, and he said, I don't know if I want to do this. And it was the first time ever that, because he's a loyal, he used to call himself a lobster. Lobsters mate for life. Very loyal. He was incredibly unhappy. I was unhappy, but we didn't look at each other like we were each the source of the unhappiness. There was no abuse, there was no addiction, there was no adultery. Those are the three main reasons people divorce. It was a long attrition through the money issues and the losses and struggling with our daughter and all of that. And it finally came to a place where I said, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. And so I had to reinvent myself, because he's a healer and he's a really, as I said, a good man. But I was sort of running his businesses and being the mom. So my entire life was the woman behind the throne, so to speak.
Interesting.
And the
And
mom
that was your
behind the
identity.
children.
You had an
Yes.
identity probably attached to that, and roles and momentum, habits.
Yep. Great point. Because one thing, so calling myself out on this, because this might help somebody else. I'm thinking I'm being all noble and this is the right thing to do, to stay home and be the mom to these two beautiful children who are, you know, extraordinary in their own right. But it was a way of hiding. It was a way of not stepping into my power and not stepping into my light and not stepping into what I could be creating, which you're looking at now. But had I started this 20 or 30 years ago, this would be a different company, right? And that's okay, because all timing comes the way it's supposed to. Now, you touched on something critical that I really want to pull apart a little bit. We are not our identities.
That's
we
right.
are not the roles we play. So what happens for women, particularly in their 50s or when their children leave for college, they were the place they put all their love, or the place where they got self-esteem and knew why they were in the world. And there's another piece I want to pull on that. Ladies out there, if you're in your 30s or 40s, don't forget that the man in your life is the most important relationship, really. That's the person with whom you're going to walk the rest of your life if you guys keep going on the same trajectory. In other words, if one is expanding and growing and becoming, and the other one stays the same, this is not good, because eventually that could break it apart. But don't choose not to expand because you want to stay in a small game. You know,
well said.
Hit for over the wall, no matter what, because this life is very short. We have a certain amount of time on planet Earth. What are we going to do with it? And that's the question. And I don't care what you've done before this, everybody out there. I don't care what you've done before this. Making a difference, stepping into your own aliveness can happen right now. There's something called vibration. The quantum field of science, the quantum physics, everything's energy. Even a rock, even though the molecules are moving slowly, everything is energy. So we're all connected in this way. Just do what you're able to do now. Just take that first step for how can I feel more alive today? Oh, I'm going to go out and walk amongst the trees. I know I'm going to get up at 3 a.m. and watch the meteorites. There are small steps that you can take. And one last thing on this, I think it's Jim Clear. He has an amazing little video on YouTube, and it's maybe 4 to 7 minutes long, but it's the 1% better. How do you become 1% better today? Because it's aggregate gains. In 6 months, you'll be so far along because you did these 1% little things each day.
Send me a link on that too, and I'll put it in the description.
Sure.
Yes. And I'll certainly have your website and everything else.
So who am I? I am a healer. I am a coach. I do corporate trainings. We do medicine wheel retreats here on the mountain, which is from the Toltec wisdom of the Caro of Peru. Incredibly powerful, transformative thing. None of this is who I am. I'm a being. I'm just a spiritual being here on planet Earth doing the best I can. Because we all have to deal with this muggle world where there's taxes. There are mirrors. In other words, people in our lives will present conflict we get to deal with. We are all these things. It's hard to answer your question.
It's so fun to explore the question, however. I've really been enjoying it. And through your answer, I really get more of a sense of who you are and where you are. I imagine that you're very grateful to be where you are today, being able to laugh at some of these tragic situations in some ways that
Oh,
you feel like at the time, you feel like, how am I ever going to get through this? And I loved what you said about the 1%. I'm just going to get up and do 1% better than I did yesterday.
yeah. So
100
two
days
things.
later, see how you could.
Yes.
That's kind of
Two
neat.
things that you said. Gratitude. So Wayne
Mhm.
Dyer used to get up every morning and put his hands like this with the palms to the ceiling and just say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And what you can do out there, if you just do that small thing, you have shifted into the vibration of gratitude, which is way higher than shame or blame or anger or resentment or prejudice or any of those things. Those are low vibrations. You can hang out there if you want. If that's working for you, keep going. But if you want a quick way to shift into gratitude is thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And yes, I love what you just said because you're very thoughtful. You really
Oh,
listen. And that's an art, folks. Learn how to listen to other people, truly listen to other people. So the story of all that is just a story at this point. It's essentially a story. Now, the pain that people suffer through is the story they've attached to the story.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so they hang on to the story because the story, the thing that happened, has already happened. It's in the past. It doesn't exist anymore. And yet they'll ruminate and the little hamster wheel will go in the head. And I should have this and I could have this. And if he hadn't left me and she hadn't done this and taken all my money, which is that people are victims.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a big one that I've learned over my lifetime. And it's one of the knock it out of the park lessons
Mm-hmm.
that you talk
Yes.
about.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Because everything happens for you, nothing happens to you. But everyone thinks everything's
Mhm.
happening to me. Oh, I can't believe that happened to me. Oh, she makes me feel this way. All of those are choices. I swear they're choices. Nothing happens to you, everything happens for you. So to look at, let's say, I look back at the horseback riding accident.
No, that was even another. It's hard to believe that now. I'll tell you that, Joni. You look wonderful. I mean,
But
not that you wouldn't hit 100 pounds more either, but it's just, yeah.
thank you. Thank you. But how that was for me is first of all, that was a bizarre study and really realizing I'm not my body. This
Yes, what a
vehicle,
gift.
yeah. So
What?
this vehicle, this organic thing that we walk around in is here so that we can experience planet Earth, so that we can experience sex, that we can experience food, we can experience joy and your smile and everything else. So we are gifted these bodies. But I realized I am not my body. And I had to the humility that came with that because there's a certain currency in looking good in this society. There's a huge price
Absolutely.
tag. Yeah. And so to have that completely stripped from me. So who am I? And how do I show up in the world? One day, my daughter just said to me, she was 14. She said, oh, mama, just choose to be happy. And a light bulb went off. I went, oh my gosh. If I don't choose to be happy right now, because I could not lose 3 pounds, it was the same 3 pounds over and over again. And that doesn't show up very much on a 100-pound overweight person. 3 pounds up, 3 pounds down. There wasn't a huge shift there. What if I never lose the weight? Victoria, what if I never lose the weight? Am I going to hate myself and close the curtains and live inside the house for the rest of my life? Or do I choose to live life now fully, powerfully, no matter what, and see what happens? And you can see now I'm not carrying 100 pounds. And out of that came a health and wellness workshop. Out of that came the ability to coach other people in how to be healthy. But it's all about how do I treat my body in a way that I am the healthiest I can possibly be and able to show up in my life as alive as possible. Because I'm older than I've ever been. And I was gifted with a coach that told me when I was 43 years old, because my daughters had become an age where when we walked down the street, they were getting the looks, not me.
That
I
happened to
became
me a couple days
invisible.
ago.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had become invisible. And so she said to me, well, Joni, you're never going to be any younger than you are right now. So just be the best goddamn 43-year-old you can be.
I love it.
So 20 years later, I'm being the best gall darn 63-year-old I can be, you know?
Aw.
And I can admit that age is whatever. It is, how do I feel in my soul? How do I feel in my heart? And I'm probably the healthiest and
Mm.
strongest and most powerful in my body that I've ever been at this age. It can be done.
I agree with you on so many things. I'm very empowered by your willingness to share your personal story and how it actually, sometimes the worst things that happen end up being some of the best things that happen for us without realizing it. If we can kind of be at source, like you said, and instead of thinking, oh, life is just happening to me or I'm a victim, I have no power to do anything or change anything. It's
Mhm.
more of like being at source, as you
Mhm.
said, and saying, okay, whatever's happening here is probably here for a reason. And I want to say something too about the body, because, I too used to have issues or concerns or feeling like my body was against me on some level. And then I heard an affirmation about, I love my body. It's my oldest friend. And then
Mm.
this is, yes, that was Heather Forbes. She works with children a lot and
Mm.
with people on parenting, and it's incredible. And so,
That's
but what I really love is how the intensity of what happened. You had this kind of turn back moment of some sort back when your daughter said, why don't you just be happy? And then you kind of question that. It perked you up, and it's like, what if I'm always this way? You know what? I'm okay with that. I
mhm.
kind of get the feeling that you're like, if that's the way it is, I'm not going to stop my life or my joy. And then you got into learning about the wellness and that I love to hear more about that, the exercise, the food, whatever, that kind of took that turn at that time. And then before you knew it, I bet you look back and were like, wow, when did this happen that I got to be at a place where I really feel that I am healthy physically
Mhm.
and that the weight matches, and I never
I
had a
love
scale,
that.
by the way. Yeah. I
Yeah.
never owned a scale because I had too many friends with eating disorders and I didn't
Mhm.
want my daughters to get into that.
So when she said that, what I realized was that at 14, I had her for 4 more years. I could make in that 4 year period, what's the difference I can make in her life? The difference I can make is to be the best role model I can possibly be. And so I was going to do everything I could to be somebody that I would be proud of as a daughter. And she said, Mama, I want to go to Coachella. Would you take us? Now I'm over 100 pounds. I did not fit in with Coachella. I didn't care.
What is Coachella? Tell us.
Coachella is a huge music festival in California,
Oh,
world renowned, usually 100 degrees. People are doing Molly. I'm watching this person do this, and I'm thinking they're having a spiritual moment, and they're like, "What a cool person!" Mama, she said to me, "Mama, the person's rolling." I'm like, rolling. So when they do ecstasy or Molly,
oh,
they
I see. So that
yes. Now
ecstasy
how
kind of happened after my
after my
time.
sobriety, yeah.
I'm in the same boat as you, about the same age. Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
haven't had a mind altering anything in 40 years. So
Oh, wow. It's amazing how you can make a choice like that too,
yes,
which is
a
another
choice.
rabbit hole. But it is a choice. And same here. Last time I had any mood altering drugs or alcohol was like 36 years ago. And I just started not doing it. And it was because of health a lot that I made that choice. Come to think of it,
Yeah.
it was
So
I was
this is
happy.
actually a diversion or a like we're turning down another little lane here, which is awesome.
Well, choose your
So
lane though.
let's
I'm okay
just
with
no,
it.
I love this lane. And then I'll go back to what I was going to say, which this lane in particular, people who use sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol,
Sign me up.
food. But
Yeah.
those are people who are usually highly intelligent. They're also usually highly sensitive, and they usually come from families and sometimes they're great families, but families where maybe they weren't given the tools to understand their spiritual body on this plane, right? Not knowing how to manage our own inner lives, we're trying to put something from the outside in to change how we're feeling. And they call it the black hole. There's
Mhm.
not enough anything to fill the black hole. So if we give our children the tools we're talking about today, where they know they have choice, they can make decisions, that they nothing's happening to them, that everything's happening for them, that they can do meditation, they can do yoga nidra, they can do so many things other than reaching for, and kids will reach for food because it's the first drug of choice that's available. So I think that was an important thing to be said. Thank you for bringing that up. And what happened to me back in that cluster of darkness is I began to plan for the future. What am I going to do? Well, I'm really good at sponsoring people. I'm really good at coaching people. Maybe I should get a certification. So I have a certification in executive leadership. And then I thought, okay, I want to go deeper. So I got a bachelor's degree. I got a bachelor's degree at UCLA long ago. This is a second bachelor's degree in metaphysical counseling. And so that really deepened the work that I do. And then I unexpectedly met my now guy. And we've been together 6 years. And he happens to be a shaman who was trained in the tradition of the Q'ero of Peru. And he and I have started doing these retreats here on the mountain, which, by the way, I lived in LA for 40 years. I now live in a town of 7,000. It's hysterical. So I fly around to do all the executive leadership stuff. But we are now doing these leadership retreats.
Tell me more about that.
Well, yes. It's fascinating.
It just sounds incredible.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, shamanism, some people think it's voodoo. They hear that word if they don't know, and they think, witchcraft, or, and the truth is, it's a wisdom-based tradition. The tradition that we follow is about the path of freedom, so that everybody gets to choose. We're not telling them what to think. We're not telling them how to be. There's zero cultishness about this. It is all about empowering people. How? It's a map. How do you live your life? How do you get rid of your stories of the past? How do you clear that? How do you clear the ancestral lineage? How do you face your shadow side? How do you deal with the mirrors? And when I say mirrors, I'm talking about every time we're triggered, every time we have an emotional charge of another person, we think, oh, that person's so judgmental. Oh, that person's so talkative. They talk way too much. Oh, they're just this, they're just that. The truth is, that person is a mirror that's triggering something in your luminous field. So that gets cleared. And then we go to the north. So the south, and the west, and the north. And in the north, we deal with roles and identities. And being able to walk through life without emotional or energetic Velcro. So people don't Velcro onto you. I know, right? It's so powerful.
I mean, that's like, why is that not taught in grade school?
Well, and it's interesting because shamanism, all the traditions, all the religious traditions, if you go back, it all began with these, do unto others as you would do unto yourself. All those, everything overlaps. It's fascinating. So it's about freedom. And then the East, it's 4 directions. So it's 4 workshops over a year period. So people walk out transformed. And transformation means the death of something. So it's the death of the old way of being, the old victim, the old us. And then the rebirth, the phoenix rises. That's the process.
Unbelievable. This is very important.
Well, it's, that old commercial where they slap their forehead like, I could have had a V8. People are, first of all, mind blown. Second of all, wow, why wasn't I taught this? Because if you're empowered and free, you can't be controlled. If you look at all the institutions, whether it's the government or some of the religions, I want to say some because I don't want to offend anyone out there, but there's a piece, there's a aspect of control the masses. And what we're saying is empower yourself, uplift all of life. That's the goal for all the people going through our courses. If everybody becomes free and their mission is to uplift all of life, if you think of the stone being thrown in the pond and it ripples out, let's have more of those ripples as opposed to I'm right. You're wrong.
This is wonderful. I love this uplift all of life. That just feels so true and natural and clear. And that also sounds like something that helped you with your daughter when you thought, what can I do to be of service to her? How can I be the best mom? And so now what you're saying is you're expanding that to all of life. And you're saying in each moment, and here's some tools. And I'll tell you, one of the things it sounds like you have in your training is that you go through, well, what are these old beliefs? What are these old patterns or habits or things like this that I thought were reality, that are my old friends that are comfortable? And I know for me, it was kind of hard when I've gone through transformation, also through Pathway to Happiness, which is based on Toltec wisdom
There
and
you
the Four
go.
Agreements. I know for me, it was kind of scary because I learned, first of all, what those old beliefs were that weren't working anymore, that were lies, so to speak. And then it was a little bit of a like a buffer zone as I got to learn, well, then what is lie? What's the truth? What's life? What's
Yes.
real? And the
Yeah.
more that I just did what you said, which is start somewhere and the 1% and get the information and go with guides, spend time with guides, coaches like you, Joni. I mean, you don't have to do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, but
Yes.
continue on. I just had to speak to this because that little space between knowing something to lie and you don't want to do it anymore doesn't match for you anymore. And the new, like what's next, can be a little scary. And it
Yes.
sounds like with your workshops, with the shamanism, with the four directions, that
Mm-hmm.
you really have like a midwife process where you're helping people to walk
To help
through some of
themselves.
those
Yes.
major life transformations.
Mm-hmm. There is such a shift that happens each weekend. We have what's called the reentry day, which is Sunday, the last day of the workshop. And we go through breath work. We do all kinds of things, dreaming, we do meditations, they do work together, they do something called sand paintings out on the land, and the land helps to mulch this whole
Mm.
process. It has never been more powerful or palpable, and it's because of the land where we're at right now. And we went, maybe you should buy a house. And he said, well, I drove through this little town called Trinidad once. Maybe we should go and see there. And then I snuck this house on the list of things to look at. So you know what I mean? There are certain cosmic magical things that they seem to be magical, but they're in
Right.
alignment with, like, it's like our dreamers, our the source knew where we would are headed if we choose. And so there needs to be a space. If you build it, they will come, right? Do you remember that movie?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely.
Self-blame, self-recrimination, beating yourself up, the hair shirt, the whacking yourself, all that stuff. Stop it. It does not help. It is completely useless. Identifying something, clearing something, letting something go, allowing that drama and that engagement to just float off, that's helpful. So then we give tools about how do you stop engaging? How do you practice non-attachment so that you're not attached to other people's behavior, you're not attached to other outcomes, you're not attached to things, and then you don't engage in the drama. Let's talk about that. First one, it's, well, I'll get them out of order, but I'll get them all. Don't take anything personally.
My favorite.
Right. And everybody goes, oh, but everything's personal. No, literally
Nothing.
nothing is
Nothing.
personal. We take things personally if we get triggered. If there's something in our past, if there's something that's happened, if there's a Velcro, we're back to the Velcro, then we go, oh, I can't believe that person said that. But let's say the person told me I had purple hair. Would I take that personally? No, because it's not even close to purple. I know that. But if the person says, your hair is going to dry, and I could take that personally because my hair is different than it was 30 years ago. But I'm like, yeah, it is kind of dry. Who cares?
At least
It's
I have some hair.
at least I
You can always find the bright
positive
side.
attitude. There you go.
That's
I do. I
right.
love my hair. I'm fine.
I like your hair.
Don't take anything personally. Somebody might be having a bad day. But here's the thing. If you go out and you encounter an angry person and you react, you take it personally, then you walk into the store. Now you have the angry energy and you're attracting another angry person. Now you got that. And then you go home and then you take all that out on your wife or husband or children. You got that. If you can stop in the moment and go, wow, I wonder what's going on with this person. I feel really, and I did this. I was playing pickleball the other day. I thought, oh, sweetheart, you must be in a lot of pain. I could have taken it personally, But the control, the telling me what to do or whatever it is, right? We all love that. But I went in my soul, I said, wow. And so there was no Velcro to attach onto. It ended right there, like the ball just dropped. So self-blaming, and resentments are another one. So if you've got a resentment of another person, you've heard this before.
Yes.
That's like you wishing the person would die and you taking the poison.
That's right.
So
and it's hard to know until you've seen it both ways. I recently was talking to a friend and she couldn't help herself. She told her sister something because her sister was kind of acting fake, talking to her and saying, "Oh, I'm just, how are you doing?" and everything. But it was just she had avoided her all summer. And so my friend said, "Oh, I'm doing great. How are you?" And so her sister had took it personally and got upset. And the thing that we talked about is that, how did you feel later? It didn't feel good. No, two wrongs don't make a right. We don't have to be out there, and if we don't take anything personally, where is really any place for resentment to live? I mean,
right.
yeah.
Good point. And if I'm showing up to uplift all of life as best as I can, I am not a perfect person. Right? I am definitely a human person, but if I'm there to uplift all of life, and in other words, be a kind human being, then I'm less likely to trigger other people, or maybe my happiness will trigger somebody who is absolutely attached to their negativity and attached to their suffering. If they see somebody who is free, it's really irritating to them. But I'm not responsible for their experience. I am not responsible for how other people perceive me or connect with me, not connect with me, anything like that. Like the two sisters, they're not responsible for each other's experience, nor are they responsible for telling the other how to live their life better. That's another one people do, right?
Absolutely.
All right. So I want to talk about the ego, but let's go through the 4 agreements first. Okay. So let's go back to number 2 is don't make any assumptions. So if somebody says something, I can assume they meant something. And now I'm taking it personally. And it's like
they all work together.
Snowball. They do. They all work together. But if I don't take assumptions, and this is something, one of the reasons I started a podcast in 2018 is because I needed to learn how to have a voice. I didn't know that's why I was doing it. But that's how it was happening for me. And I became a person with a voice. And so part of that was learning to ask questions. And then I meet John, who I call Curious George. He asks questions he's so curious about life. It's just, wow, isn't this interesting? And why did you say that? Oh, wow. So I learned to ask questions and be curious. And then I realized, oh, wait, I'm kind of interesting. Because I wasn't asking questions because I really didn't find myself that interesting. So people would ask me how I was, and I'd say, oh, well, my daughter's doing really well. Which is probably codependence too, but that's a whole nother story. So I've healed that. And if somebody asks me how I'm doing, I tell them how I am doing. So number 3 is don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. Be impeccable with your word.
Yes.
Be impeccable with your word. Do you want to talk about what that means to you, or shall I just? Okay.
But for me, to be impeccable with my word is being truthful and honest to myself as well.
Yes. And kind to yourself as well. That's the biggest piece. People miss that piece. Who beats up on us more than us?
No one.
I know where all my buttons are. And so to learn not to do that, to be kind to yourself, to be loving to yourself, what you think, Victoria, is your reality.
Absolutely.
We are the creator of everything through our own thoughts. So we have to be careful. We have to keep discernment. But if I choose that this is a good world, does it have its problems? Sure. But I'm not going to fixate, obsess, or concentrate on all the negativity. I'm not going to do it. I choose a different world. So what we think is really the world that we create, because your world is your world, my world is we all have our own little universe, right? So why would we choose a negative, mean old universe? We're back to choice. And then the last one, number 4, is just do your best. And I say it that way because just do your best. I mean, the words written on the page say, just do your best. But if we're all just doing our best, then we're not going to beat ourselves up. And exactly. We'll learn, if we didn't do our best today, then we'll learn from it if we're conscious.
Mm-hmm.
and we'll do better tomorrow. Okay. So the ego that I wanted to get to,
Our friend, the ego.
yeah, our friend, the ego. So I need my ego because this tells me I'm Joni and you're Victoria and everybody else is everybody else, so that I can experience being this person on planet Earth. But the ego run amok, the ego out of balance says, you're separate, I'm better, I'm smarter, I know what is going on. Or my ego wants to bubble wrap my children so that they don't feel pain, so that I don't feel pain. All of this is ego. And so ego is great to a degree, but when it is out of balance, it really causes us pain and suffering. What do you think about ego?
I completely agree with that. I've heard my ego is not my amigo. But I see, what's neat today, though, is that you shared the purpose of the ego. Though, yeah, it does make sense for us to say, hey, this is me. This is my little sphere, my bubble, my territorial imperative, or whatever. Maybe the ego is in that sphere where, too much takes it over the top, and then it's not of service to me or anybody else. And I think that the ego goes along with the judge for me sometimes, and it goes along with competition, and it goes along with some of these things that, and I'm not, against a friendly game of, frisbee golf or something. But at the same time, it's like a lot of times between women, we have this, or, in general, money, or where you are in the strata of your corporation. I mean, there's so many places where the ego goes in. And here's my big thing is that I don't want the ego running my life. I don't
Yes.
want those, I don't, and to me, the ego is an expansion of society's norms sometimes as well. It goes back to what you said very early in our conversation. I want to blossom myself, and I want to become empowered, and I want to think for myself. And I think that the ego comes in more when I'm tired, because then I tend to fall back on what society says or what my family might have thought or whatever. And that's where it's important for me to break away. And I think when I'm in my ego, I trigger harm in people sometimes because I'm too concerned about what's in it for me, or how, how am I looking through this? And I think the word humility comes up more for me and like you said, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. However, we gradually go along, and the less that my ego is in charge and it's more of a support, like you said, in a very reduced role, then flat out, the happier I am.
Yes. And so you brought up a fabulous word that I used to hate, humility.
Yes.
Because somehow my brain connected that to humiliation. And humility is the opposite of ego. So my ego was fighting the word humility.
Of course.
Humility is a surrender of being part of the one. And humility means showing up as humble. And so you said about the ego, do you have an ego, or does your ego have you?
Ah, I love that. Thank you for
Right?
sharing that.
Yes. So
Say that again. Say that again.
Do you have an ego, which would be balance, or does the ego have you? Is your ego running you? Is your ego, causing havoc and drama in your life? Then it has you. Okay. So with angry people, do you have anger, or does the anger have you? Are you angry at everything? Are you running over landmines at the grocery store, in your kitchen with your kid? Does it have you? So ask yourself that question. And then the other question I always have people ask themselves is, if they think something, okay, stop. Is it true? Is it true? Is your neighbor trying to blow up all the ground growers, or, or is that person attacking you? Is that person trying to, and there are some petty tyrants out there that they just live to cause conflict. But if you can recognize, oh, petty tyrant, not going to engage. This is not personal. I am not going to engage. You will have a great deal more peace in your life. And you can have a petty tyrant as a spouse, and you can change that behavior in them by not reacting to it and setting boundaries. And that's a whole nother podcast about boundaries. So anyway, that's my take on the ego. There's a book by David Hawkins, and it's Power versus Force. And it's a little complex, but the most important part of that is you can go on to DuckDuckGo or whatever your search engine is, and
DuckDuckGo.
you can search for David Hawkins' scale of consciousness. And they'll have many very beautiful colorized scales of consciousness. But at the bottom is shame at 20. The vibration or the frequency is 20. Do you know how much shame rules people?
Yes.
And then right above that, it's best friend. Guilt and shame, guilt and shame. And I've heard that shame is I'm a mistake, is I made a mistake. So do you hold on to those? Because those are very low vibrational things. So I want to get into a couple of tools, which is you can do breath work, like dance, you can do tapping, and you can do all
I
these
love tapping.
Yes, go on YouTube, folks, and type in tapping for healing, tapping for anxiety, tapping for release, whatever it is you're, and binaural beats, BINAURAL. And you wear a headset because the tones change and it helps to recalibrate or connect your brain. And you can just do a meditation that way.
If you can send a couple of links, I'll put them in the description too.
Okay. Well, and I'm not connected to any of these. These are just things that I use and that I recommend.
Just our opinion.
Because we want to raise the frequency, the vibration. Notice on these binaural beats, they'll give you frequencies: 432, love, healing, 52, whatever. It's so just pay attention. And then I do the ones that have like 25 million views. I know that's a good one. That's how I navigate that. So, and if you have trauma, we haven't talked about trauma, but if you have now trauma can be mommy didn't pick me up at 2. That's still a trauma.
Right. We're not here to judge.
But sometimes it can be sexual assault. It could be, horrific things. It could be divorce in the family. These are traumas that store in the body somatically along the meridians. So tapping can help with that. But also, if you have some severe stuff in your life, I would highly recommend finding a good MDR therapist. Very effective. But in the medicine wheel, some of that gets handled in the Toltec processes, the healing processes that we do. So anyway.
I love what you bring up here about the somatic types of healing with the tapping or with the dancing or with the breathing. And, a lot of the healing I've done was with a counselor or with a group or with structure and that kind of thing, and talking about thoughts and feelings. Yes. And at the same time, much of my healing was also somatic. One of the interesting things I did was biofeedback back in the day, which was another way to catch my thoughts that were really, because I could hear my body reacting when I would get a really tough thought. And so and I do meditation, which I feel is medicine, like you, but yes.
Another tool. I love how we're talking because you'll spark something in me and then I spark something in you. And that to me is a great conversation. So you're talking about negative thoughts. And we were talking about being impeccable with your word, but they have done studies, and there's a doctor, Matsuro, I think, but you can Google that too, or DuckDuckGo it and say scientific experiments with words and water or something like that. So what scientifically controlled studies, he would take drops of water, put them on the microscope glass slides, and he would put several of these, and then put different words in front of them. So each word has a different vibration. So cruelty or anger or punk music, or actually he did music. He did a completely separate experiment. So what would happen with the crystallization as it froze is it would be brown. It would be asymmetrical. Snowflakes are symmetrical normally.
Oh, yes.
So then the ones that had love and kindness and upliftment, those were perfectly crystalline, white, balanced snowflakes, so to speak. And then he did it with music, Mozart versus heavy metal and classic music at a molecular level. Our words matter, and they stick to things too. at a molecular level, what I say to you matters. What I say to myself matters. So if you're talking to your child or your spouse or somebody out at the dollar store, what are you saying and how are you saying it? Because it's also the vibration behind it. So going back to Dr. Hawkins' scale of consciousness, love is at 400, shame is at 20 or 500, something like that in there. Peace is at 600. Enlightenment is at 1,000. So some people are living with shame and guilt or grief. That's 150, maybe 180, something like that. And the grief process you have to go through. I mean, you can't avoid, or it just gets somatically stored.
Right.
But we can move through it and above it and beyond it. So somatically, if people are still saying, well, what does that mean? The experience, if you don't clear it, 48 hours gets stored in your body. And some of us at my age, if you haven't done the work, think about that. The collective baggage a person can be hauling. It's like a U-Haul behind them, right? But it can be cleared.
I think that that is the truth. It can be cleared. And no matter what you've been through, I think both you and I are powerful example of this. We both, had some trauma in our past and dealt with it in different ways and finally reached a point of like, no, I'm going to try something different and started somewhere. And here we are, apparently both extremely happy. And I have to say, in every area of life, it looks, I'm going to guess in your case, but it's certainly in my case as well. And so, for those of you out there listening where things are tough right now and difficult, and you're feeling like, I'll never get to this place where these women are at, hang on to your socks. Because if you just start somewhere, it is very possible to get through anything. And also, as you said, whether you have a spouse or not that has some of these tendencies, I can be happy no matter what anybody else says or does. Now, I may have to get into a safe place if it's not safe or whatever, but certainly the attitude you'd have too of if somebody is doing something that I end up getting the Velcro or a hook by, I can always just basically take a break and say, okay, what's going on with me that I need to change and not be a victim in order to be happy in this world.
And great point. As long as the person is safe, physically safe.
Right.
Right. And where do I go to get the tools I need, whether it's a book or a podcast? I love podcasts. And so it's okay, Victoria, for us to have all areas of life work. Did you know that?
Yeah, I love being around people who also have that belief system, because I'll tell you what, if I'm not spiritually fit, if I'm tired or something like that, and I'm around people that are expressing some judgment or want to project some shame onto me or something or invalidate, because we grow up in these families and we get a certain role. I had the black sheep for a while anyway, and so
you were the more interesting one.
But later I told some of my friends like you, I said, you go back to your family events now and you feel kind of like the most sane person in the room sometimes. But I don't like to compare. What I'm trying to say is that what a friend of mine said, you think things are good now, this is the tip of the iceberg of what's available if you just keep going.
And here's I can probably speak for both of us when I say this, is that if they want to hang on to, probably the people that are listening to your podcast are not going to be these people, but if they want to hang on to their anger and their sadness and their baggage, and they want to collect even more and put it in the storage unit, I mean, I have zero judgment. I have no judgment. I don't need them to be happy. I don't need them to be a certain way. That's where part of my freedom comes from. When I coach, and I keep a private practice of coaching because I love it so much, my vibration stays way up there because my commitment is to show up 100% and to get my ego and myself out of the way so that I can channel through what needs to be said in this moment so that the person is empowered to go out and live their lives. I don't need it to work. I don't need it to look a certain way. That's where we practice non-engagement and non-attachment and non-judgment. And let's talk about, I think we've been talking a long time, but I want to get this in here. Okay. People who are judging or gossiping, they know me here. They'll even say to me, well, I was going to, no, never mind. Because they know I won't engage. And I'll even call them out on it. If they get called out once, they'll either stop being my friend or they'll stop gossiping because I'm not interested. It's not a currency for me. And I understand that we learn that at the knee of our parents or whomever, but they're trying to connect with other human beings using that currency. And they don't have to do that, because what it does is it's trying to put other people down so that they feel elevated. They try to make them inferior so that they feel superior. But guess what? We are all one. Victoria, am I? Joe, am I? John, am I? Susie, am I? We're all part of this bizarre and fabulous experiment. And we're all connected energetically. And we're all part of the one, capital O. And so we're back to the ego just tells us who we are so that we can, have that experience and then go back to the O, to the one. You can call him God, you can call him source, you can call him great spirit, you can call him anything you want. You can not call him at all. You can completely disagree with me, and that's okay too. But think about that. I'm going to want you to win. I'm going to want you to feel joy. I'm going to want you to have all the success. I'm going to want you to touch as many people in the world as possible, because Victoria, am I?
I love that perception. And yeah, it just reminds me of that saying about a rising tide lifts all boats. And so if we see somebody getting better, and I sometimes would have in my journey through getting to this place of transformation and happiness, I've run into people that were really great for part of the journey. And then as I got to be healthier and I had been depending on them to be a mentor to me or something, some of them had a hard time with the fact that I was then getting to this place of being okay. I trust the universe. And something I hear in your voice with the people you work with, especially, is you trust their process. You trust their direction and their goal, and that you don't have judgment about it. You're just there to facilitate, like a spiritual midwife or something, to just kind of figure out what's going on and where do you want to be. And then there's some of these tools, such as judging people and gossiping and things like that, that you might think are going to get you that underlying desire. But oftentimes these tools, these strategies of judging others end up doing the opposite of what you really want. And so that's what I didn't know. And I judged myself a lot, I'll say that. And I loved what you said earlier about this is a bottom line. We can't be judging ourselves and beating up on ourselves and criticizing ourselves, because I'll tell you, I don't even have any need for the shame and the guilt on the bottom of the spectrum. It's like today I don't need it. Now that was
as an indicator.
Yes.
As an indicator, it's great. Because if you try to go back there, you go, oh, I'm doing that thing. That's the only use for it. Right?
Yeah, I can feel it.
It has a function. Yes.
I can feel it.
Yes. And I have to say, I remember being in my 30s and I went to my mentor and I said, God, that woman bothers me. She's constantly talking and listening to her own voice. And it's just, I can't even be there. And the mentor said, where do you do that? So there's the mirror. If I'm judging someone for judging, I'm the judger, right? And I can't change it, because the truth is she's there to teach me. Everybody's a guru, and a guru only means teacher. So you're my guru. You'll say something and I'll go, whoa, I love that. The boat's in the tide. That's fabulous. Or somebody does something angry and road rage or something. Oh, I used to do that. Oh, I'm so grateful that I'm here now.
Yes.
And then you mentioned judgment. And I remember that piece where I was like totally judging this woman. And that was my go-to was judgment, which is one of the reasons that's a pet peeve for me. It's just, you don't know the freedom that you'll have from letting that go. It serves no purpose.
I mean, even the opposite of being able to see the best in everyone, the basic core of goodness. To me, I mean, I can do that to a fault as well.
Yes,
However,
that's what I said. Thank you. Because discernment, because we can project in the same way we can project judgment about the judgy person. We can project this kindness and love and who we are in the world or want to be in the world or whatever on these people. And then when they do something sarcastic and mean, you go, oh, ow, I've been stabbed, because you didn't have the discernment,
right,
to see that they are a human being and they are not you in their individuation. Are they you in the one? Yes. But their individuation is not you.
I love that. And these people you probably don't go to lunch with.
I have discernment now.
Exactly. And that, I mean, it is a process, isn't it?
Yes,
You know,
it's
you
all a
get to the
process.
place of being so happy, and I just want to, the same people over and over, I'll just try to be closer to or whatever, and they have no interest. And
Yeah.
so then I have to be mindful of and
So then there's your
respectful.
mirror. There's your
Right.
mirror. Where have I tried to get blood from a stone? Where have I tried to get love from an unavailable source, and why? And what do I get to be right about? Right? I mean, that's how powerful the mirrors are.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, I really hope we can have more conversations in the future because I am just so enjoying this and this concept of, you know, how often we pursue the unavailable and this kind of thing, especially in the past. And then when you finally realize, wait a minute, that strategy isn't getting me to that underlying desire. And I don't blame myself anymore for these things. I just notice,
No.
is what I'm
Yeah.
doing actually, what is it underneath it all that I'm really trying to get?
So here's the point. You're on your spiritual journey and you keep going in that direction, and somebody needs you to be fixable so that they can be the fixer. So that's where they get their self-esteem and their value, because they think that role they play is who they are. Do you see how it's all tied in?
Absolutely.
So do
Absolutely.
not, you or anybody else, and I know you're fine, but everybody else out there,
I
do
need to
not,
continue to learn.
do not throw a blanket on your lamp for anybody.
I mean, what can we say? That is like
Drop the mic.
exactly. I think that was a drop the mic moment. So, I mean, Joni, I am just so, my heart is full of joy spending this time with you. I actually feel lighter. I feel like I've learned. I look
Wonderful.
forward to sharing this with everyone out there and look forward to more conversations in the future. And now, can you tell people where is your website? What website do you have?
Okay. So I have Wake Up with Joni, JONI.com. And on there
Okay.
is a Calendly link. And if they want to have a free conversation with me for 20 minutes or so, if they're looking, well, first of all, if they just have a question, that's fine. Or if they're looking to possibly coach, we can talk about that to see if we're a good fit. But what you just described is what my clients say at the end of a conversation, because speaking and being heard just alone is healing. And then we'll throw in all the things that are specific to what they need to do. Anyway, it's my absolute love. So they're welcome to do that. I have the podcast on Apple and Spotify, and it's called Wake Up with Joni. And it's all different guests. You're on there. So if you want to hear more of Victoria, she's on there. Oh, the medicine wheel. If actually, the best way to do that is go to Dr. Ivory Ray, naturopathic. I think we'll put it in the show.
Well,
But
get me
the
a
medicine
link to
wheel
that.
is led by Shaman John English, Dr. Ivory Ray, who is a naturopathic, and Joni Lerner, the metaphysical counselor. So you actually get three teachers. John has been doing this for 25 or 30 years, and the wisdom is just every time I go through this with people, for people, I learn something, just like this conversation.
You're changed. You're changed by the process yourself.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I think anyone would be lucky to have you helping them as a guide and a coach. And so, yes, I will include your contact information and your websites in the show notes. And I just really enjoyed talking with you today, Joni.
Thank you. I adore you.
Well,
everything everybody says about you is true.
likewise,
No,
likewise. Yes, I'm so
Aw.
grateful to be getting to know you more. Have a wonderful afternoon, and I really look forward to more conversations and listening to more of your podcasts and more of the people that you have on there and just sharing this abundance.
Come back to my podcast too. I adore you.
Sounds wonderful, Joni. Talk with you soon.